Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the HR Tech Chat video podcast. And I am very, very happy to have with me today a very good friend of mine, someone you may very well know, Pete Tiliakos, and he is Global Payroll Product Strategy Leader at Alight Solutions. But that really is just scratches the surface of your background, Pete. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a fan. Glad to be here.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's high praise, as Nick Cage would say, I believe. But in any event, um, maybe you could share with our audience, for those of them that may not be familiar with you, just your background. I know there's a lot of background in payroll, and I just want to maybe you could unpack that for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here. Yeah, so Pete Tiliakos, obviously you mentioned that. I'm a longtime payroll leader in the space. I've been, well, really HR as well. I shouldn't just say payroll. I've done quite a few things, but most recently I've been an industry analyst like yourself, covering the HCM technology market and global payroll and payroll services space. For a couple of firms over the last almost 6 years. And then prior to that, had a very long career in really HR outsourcing and shared services. So as I like to say, I've kind of grown up in the transformation world, and done everything from practitioner to pre-sales to sourcing advisory and consulting, to being an industry analyst, and now helping shape a product here at Alight. So yeah, it's really an exciting time to be in the industry, and it just feels like all that experience has kind of caught a wave, in some ways. So having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, very impressed with your career, and I'll mention also, I will I credit you with sort of bringing me the last 5% in terms of understanding just to what exactly employers of record are. For instance,
Yeah.
I said who would be good to explain this to me, and I thought, Pete, and I reached out to you, and you were a great
Yeah.
help there. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Um, HR Technology Conference and Expo. This is very much on everyone's mind this week. I know a lot of us were out there last week in Las Vegas at the Mandalay Bay. I heard somebody today say it was Mandalay Bay isn't necessarily one of the swankiest resorts out there, and that was the first I'd ever heard that. It's one of my favorites. I love that place.
Yeah.
They have have a great house band, at least back several years ago, that I used to sneak out to watch every once in a while when I was out there in Vegas. But lots of really interesting stuff happening in the HR technology world and HR in general. What are your thoughts coming out of last week's show?
Yeah, yeah, I thought it was great. I don't know about you, but I mean, my feet still hurt, my legs are sore, and I just got my voice back over the weekend. So, and I'll admit, I did not stay up terribly late. I don't really drink a lot. So, for me, it was just the talking and the networking, just
Mhm.
the loud music, right? And the dry air, I think, wear you out. But wow, what that to me, that I think I've been to the last seven-ish or so HR tech conferences. To me, that was the biggest, boldest, most vibrant, most alive, probably event I've seen in a long time. Now, last year was a little bit of a hiccup because of just everything going on. I think it was bad timing. A lot of people wanted to be back, but it just was weird time. But this year it was spot on, right? I heard 8,500 people,
That's what I heard too.
total
Mhm.
participants. That's incredible. Maybe one of the bigger ones I think I've attended. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think the cool thing we learned last week, there's a couple things I think I walked away understanding, is that one, and a number of your peers have put data out there around, and you guys have as well, around the fact that, yeah, there's a lot of talk about a recession and a slowdown and things, but what we're seeing is that talent is still very important, and firms are spending money on tech and services. So I thought that was very, very refreshing. I know I saw some others say this. I felt like I ran into a lot of folks that were there to invest. Big
Mm.
banks were there. I saw some VCs, some private equity. So that was really positive, right? That shows you that aligns to what we've seen so far the first half of the year, and the spend that's been going on in the space still being spot on to 2021, if not maybe gonna pass it. So all very positive, I think, for the industry. And then, of course, I think, if you looked around the room, you saw a lot of the things that are important right now, and that's talent. Recruiting for sure was very well represented, as it always is. A lot of AI in that space, right? A lot going on there. And certainly around, I think, learning and development, no doubt skills are absolutely imperative, right? Retaining your talent, developing your talent. So all that was huge. And then of course we saw payroll, right? My favorite
Mhm.
area, payroll was well represented. I think we saw all of this, the mid-market, small market players there that you'd expect to see a good sprinkling of global payroll providers, but also the EORs, right? The booths are getting bigger. The C-suite's getting larger and more impressive on some of those firms. And so I think it just underscores. Oh, and let's not forget earned wage access, right, as well. That
Right.
was very rich there. I think that's become pretty much the standard in payroll. You have to have that financial wellness connection and flexibility part of it. So yeah, it was good to see all those things were a priority, and buyers were out, vendors were out, everyone was having a good time, and it was nice to just kind of get everybody back together.
Oh man, the IRL in real life was just great, and the also the F2F face to face.
Yes. Yeah.
I had more than one opportunity in the past couple of weeks to write an email that had IRL and F2F both in the same sentence, and
Yep.
it just felt good. um,
Well,
you know, regarding payroll,
yeah.
uh, payroll is. I agree with you, having been at the conference too, and just the conversation, the chatter, the industry
Mhm.
chatter around payroll for the past year, especially. Payroll is becoming a lot more than just payroll processing. I mean, it has
Yeah.
been for a while, but
Yeah.
there's, uh, you know, you and I, we've both been analysts, so we had to bring in the term inflection point, but so
Yep.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
feels like we're at this inflection point, or we've crossed the Rubicon, if you will, right? Where payroll will never again be what it was, in my opinion. EWA, earned wage access, is a perfect example. In all its, it's kind of it's its variants, or that might not be the right word, but
Mhm.
you think about streaming pay, on demand pay, just the possibilities around payroll are more today than we would have even fathomed, even I'd say maybe 10 years ago. For sure
Yeah.
10 years ago. um, like what are your thoughts there, like around the technological innovation today
Yeah.
in payroll?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's where I get goosebumps. I get excited, right? I was a practitioner back in my day, came up in the payroll world initially in my career. And yeah, I'm passionate about the industry, right? I want to see us all have a great payroll experience, whether we're an employee or the practitioner. Everyone deserves that fantastic, experience, right? It shouldn't be, fingers crossed. I hope my paycheck's right this week, right?
Yeah.
It should be the complete opposite, right? That should be the exception of a blunder, and it should be very explanatory and clear what is going on with your pay. And so I think it's just super refreshing to see all the money and innovation and just the focus on payroll, right? I think that COVID certainly, or at least the pandemic timeframe, really, I think, created that spotlight, as you point out, right, where payroll became infinitely more important than what it had been treated as in the past. And I think a lot of organizations had looked at payroll to what we kind of talked about as a processing center, not really all that valuable, really just a cost center, a cost location that only gets more expensive, and maybe even the biggest spend in the organization as far as their costs, right, their labor costs. So but what we've seen is that payroll is incredibly important. It holds incredibly rich data, and ultimately, despite all of that great stuff we saw in the expo room and all the great things that you learned about, if the paycheck doesn't get there for those employees, all of those bets are off. It really doesn't matter, right? You can have all the best intentions in technology, but if you don't bring all those things to the table in a way that makes sure the employee is whole and is being treated, with respect, and they feel that they have control over their pay, it's not going to last very long. And so, what I think is super refreshing is now you're seeing so much more of an emphasis being put on leveraging technology to alleviate the practitioner from being that sort of simple processor and making them more of an analytic resource to the business, allowing them to focus on projects and advancing the company's strategy and using their data to help make some positive change in the organization. And on the flip coin, you need the employee now getting very, very empowered experience, right? Where they do have control over their payroll data, and they do have control over their career and their flexibility enablers like earned wage access or what their schedules are and that sort of thing. So all that coming together, I think, is just it's great, right? It gives the practitioner a better experience, the employee a better experience, and ultimately means, hopefully, in a modernized state, better outcomes for the business as well.
Oh, totally agree. And two things that you mentioned, two things sort of jumped out for me
Yeah,
just now. Data, your payroll data, right? And also the employee, the experience, the pay experience. So
yeah,
just humor me for a second here. It seems like the payroll is becoming more of an experience,
yeah,
right?
yeah. It's a great way.
It's
Yeah,
funny to think of pay as being an experience, but I think in hindsight we're seeing that it definitely is. It definitely wasn't previously. It
hmm
was well, it was an experience by the technically speaking by the
yeah,
the dictionary definition of the word experience, but
yeah,
but none of the connotations that come with the word experience. It's just
yeah,
it was this thing that was in the background that happened every 1 or 2 weeks, and if you're elsewhere in the world, maybe once monthly,
yeah,
and that's it. Now, because of technology, you have more of an opportunity. There's more. Yeah, there's more of an opportunity to initiate an experience with your pay.
yeah,
That man, yeah, that's it.
yeah. I would
Pay
agree.
used to be like a reactive experience, something something happened to you, and now pay is something that you can make happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
A lot
yeah.
of empowerment there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's a great
Totally.
word. I've heard that elsewhere, and I wish I could remember where, because
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. Some of the vendors even are using that terminology.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a great way to describe it, an experience. And I think that experience is still has an opportunity to even improve further, right? I mean, if you think about the way in which you mentioned earlier, like just the continuous calculation methods that are a technology that's coming online, right? The interconnected nature and the digital nature of earned wage access, right? Like even while those are great for financial wellness, they're helping employees solve some financial wellness challenges and address gaps in their maybe in their finances through to the next paycheck. I think what you're actually seeing is all of that technology, right? Those integrations, that continuous calculation, the digital native sort of payment capability is all really lending itself to the point where we're probably going to see pay cycles begin to break down, right? Why should I wait
Yeah.
a month to get my paycheck when I've earned it and I have bills, right? Or I talked to someone the other day, an executive, and he was sitting there thinking about earned wage access. And I remember him saying, he said, you know what? I wouldn't mind having a little bit of my money to invest sooner, right? For my 401k versus waiting until, two weeks or whatever. That's, net present value, right? We were all taught that. And
Yeah.
so, I think that you're right. It is becoming an experience. And I think that the more that this technology proliferates and straight through processing and machine learning and such gets deeper into payroll, I think you will see a real world where we might break down those pay cycles and have this democratization of payroll where employees are kind of deciding their own experience, right? When and how I get paid, when and where, and really meeting their own needs in that flexible kind of model that I think we're all kind of leaning towards as employers.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Just the payroll, breaking down the payroll cycles. That's fascinating to me. It reminds me of something, that occurred to me a while back. And this is just, it's funny how you go back to pre-technology era, right? Like way back. Let's say you're in the Wild West and you're a
Yeah,
hired
yeah,
cowboy, right? And how are you getting paid? You're getting paid in pieces of silver or whatever it is, or
yeah,
well, I guess it was an American, U.S. currency at that point,
yep,
but you're
yep,
getting paid at the end of the day in cash,
yeah,
right? And there was no sort of infrastructure around payroll, around getting paid. And
yeah,
but it's really interesting after we kind of instituted, and I'm not familiar with like the very early days of payroll technology, right?
yeah,
It's like, you had the very earliest computers that wouldn't even necessarily look like computers to us today, but
yeah,
but it was became systematized, and then there was there was a necessity to go into a more formal cadence,
yep,
a less informal relationship between the worker and the pay.
Right.
Um, and so we ended up with pay cycles, right? And here we
Yep.
are today with a payroll technology having evolved for such a long time. And at
Mhm.
some point, this master became the servant, right? At some point, right? So for instance, in the beginning, we had the payroll cycles because the
Yes.
technology could really only, or whatever it could handle,
Yeah, the
accommodate that.
batch process. Yeah.
Yeah, now, and at some point, I don't know, mid 20th century, it became, well, we have these cycles because, or that we're developing, innovating the technology to fit the cycles,
Right, right.
and
Yeah.
so, and now we have like, I almost said terrible. I guess it is. It's probably not the right word, but definitely not the right word. But we have these enormous. That was what
Yeah.
I was looking for. I don't know why I said terrible. Enormous. But anyways, sunk costs in these systems
Yeah.
that are, frankly, against the backdrop of everything you're talking about, the pay experience, these innovations in modern payroll, like EWA and some of the other stuff coming down the pike, like streaming pay and even autonomous pay, which is very
Yeah.
much in the distant future of work, but is coming.
Yep.
Um, you're right. I mean, at what point does the sort of the existing infrastructure kind of fall away? At what point do organizations reach sort of the aha moment where they're like, okay, you know what, we're not going to worry anymore about this sunk cost,
Yeah.
because we're actually missing out, somehow financially, more so by clinging to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's actually more organizations hanging on to outdated sort of on-premise stuff, right? And you can kind of understand. I mean, payroll is one of those things that people are afraid of, right? If they don't understand it, I would even argue there's sometimes a lack of respect for payroll in the past. It's getting better, but I think there's been a lack of respect for it because I think they didn't understand it. And so I think it's been one of those things. If it isn't broke, let's don't fix it. And so yeah, just like you have some folks that are really holding on to the bitter end with their core HR, on-premise solutions, they're doing the same with payroll. And what the reality of it is there's a world of opportunity for their operating models, right? With that new technology,
Mm,
it's not going to solve everything for you, right? We all know that technology is not enough. It's just the vehicle. You've got to sort of consume the diet, if you will, take on the diet and make the evolution. I don't like to say change anymore. I like to say evolution. You really do have to
yeah.
evolve yourself as an org from these past ways. But I think it's doable. And I think the good news is that more organizations are achieving a truly global model now, right? They're maybe they're not getting to one single vendor. They can, it's possible, but some are choosing to have a few, and that's okay. But it's way better than having maybe 47 and having a different experience in every region. And
Yeah.
I think there's an opportunity now more than ever with all of this technology to bring it all together. And when they modernize it, right, it gives them the opportunity to be more agile and more resilient as an organization. But going back to that point about the modern solutions, what I love about them is they're incredibly flexible, right? Like our offering, for example, or our solution, just like many of our peers, is very modular. So you don't necessarily have to go and sort of solve all that at once. You can very much bite off the pieces and digest it as your organization needs. So yeah, I would agree. There's a lot of folks that are holding on to some outdated stuff, and as these things are coming online, we're seeing adoption. But I think there's still a lot of runway for firms to really get themselves to where they need to be ready for the next volatility, right? Pandemic, whatever. Or just to compete, right? Now you almost
Right.
have to do this just to compete, right? Earned wage access is almost table stakes to be able,
Oh yeah.
for certain industries, to compete with someone next door who you're fighting over talent for. So
To-
yeah,
to- totally agree with you on that. You mentioned, payroll getting more, not always having received respect,
yeah,
struggling to get respect, and to me, that's where, and we've had this conversation previously
yeah,
around the data. First of all, there's so much really, rich, very pertinent,
yeah.
usable, insightful, strategic data, um, in, of all things, payroll, right? And
That's
it
right.
took me a while to kind of wrap my head around that. I thought, oh, it's payroll information. So what? No offense, but I mean,
Yeah,
I kind of like think, oh, that's just basic, but then you really think about it. No, that's where it's at, is payroll data,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
Agreed.
there are payroll departments that are starting to embrace this aspect that they have this data and they can be they can show themselves to be of
Yeah.
strategic importance to leadership in the organization. And
Yeah.
there are some success stories around that. I know that.
Yeah, payroll holds a tremendous data set, right? And a lot of times it's not understood. It's also not relied upon. If it's not, if we're talking about multiple systems, data having to be brought together manually, it's not going to be trusted, right? It's not real time. It's not
Mm.
often accurate enough or timely enough for people to act upon too. So yeah, but now, right, you have a lot of opportunities with integrations and cloud systems and much of this modern landscape that we see coming online, where firms have the ability to get at that data in a moment's notice, right? Hey,
Yeah.
CFO needs a report on this country or that country. We're making a decision about something. That data can become very, very powerful when it comes to figuring out workforce decisions, looking at pay gap stuff. Oftentimes payroll has the most accurate data in the organization, right? It's
Yeah.
where do we all go when we have something to change, and we always make sure our paycheck is right. So
Right.
yeah, that data is really rich, but I think it also takes being reliable. So you need the tools to make it reliable, and you need the tools and the understanding of how to work with it and what to do with it. And if payroll can do those things and can pivot their role away from that simple ticking tying processor to more of an analytic storyteller, can help the business sort of see where there's opportunities to make some changes, maybe improve processes, maybe help them in a decision making for a collective bargaining agreement, or give them data to help them decide about where they expand to or something like that. That's going to be where payroll is going to level up, right, and give it the opportunity to be more of a strategic advisor versus the sort of simple processor of the past, and that will change the perception as well, right? And hopefully it's going to take a top down sort of bottoms up approach, right?
Yeah.
Leadership's going to have to look at payroll, give them that support and the opportunity to perform, and then payroll is going to have to obviously step up to that challenge and champion that. So, but it's exciting, right? Exciting to
It
see.
it is. It is. I love that term, level up. Payroll
Yeah.
can level up. That, you know, eh, to me, it's like an engine room, right? On a big ship, like it's, as a payroll administrator, if you're, I think we can all agree that there's some very complex things that a payroll administrator must do. And so
Yeah.
these people are professionals, absolutely. But at the same time, um, you at the same time, try to get a somebody in the C-suite to really, have take the time to listen to and appreciate
Yeah.
that. Right? It's just this is not this is not to qualify it or anything like that. It's just, this is kind of just one of these that's the way it is
Yeah. It's
situations.
oversimplified. Yeah.
Right, right.
Payroll is
But
drastically oversimplified for sure.
yeah, exactly. But at the same time, if you can, yeah, if you can take that data
Yeah.
and you can from the engine room and say, hey, we can go X number of nautical miles, if
Yeah.
we maintain a certain pace, or if we do this pace over this stretch and then that over the next, and we
Yeah.
can go this far. Instead, all of a sudden the the what is it, the what's it called where the captain is on a ship?
Oh, yeah. The whole, or
Yeah,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
the top, like
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
bridge, the
yeah.
bridge.
Yeah, I know
Yeah,
what
the
you mean. Yeah,
captain on the bridge is like,
I'm
oh,
not a boater. I'm not a boater. So
yeah, neither am I. So leave it to me to bring in a
yeah.
boat metaphor. We're not seafaring people. But anyways, yeah. So all of a
Uh,
sudden, the captain on the bridge sees the value of information coming from, of things
yeah.
happening in the engine room,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Beyond it being an abstraction, beyond sort of the idea. Well, I hope the engine doesn't fail because we need to stay on,
Yeah.
this kind of thing, which is what happens in sort of old style payroll, where
Yeah.
the engine fails, payroll messes up, and all of a sudden the C-suite has a sort of a leadership has a sort of a ball of wax to deal with.
Yeah.
Um, data,
Yep.
just to kind of go full circle on data. I had somebody ask me at the show. It was one of the large vendors, and they were talking about um, we were talking about the future of work, just kind of
Mhm.
riffing on it, and they said, what, it's interesting. You're saying a lot of things that we're saying. This was the vendor speaking,
Yeah.
but one of the things we struggle with is getting our users
Mm,
to sort of to be able to really truly fathom and kind of
yeah.
grasp and wrap their heads around this new future of work stuff that we can do, right? They're kind of
Yeah.
stuck in in their their these were not his words, but these are my words, sort of Stockholm syndrome a little bit, where
Yeah.
they're stuck in sort of their administrative work and just so focused on it and seeing that almost as their entire world. And the guy asked me, how can we get HR people to start thinking outside of that box
Mm,
and start
yeah.
embracing and understand, like fathoming, understanding, and then comprehending, and then embracing some of this future work stuff. And honestly, I didn't know exactly how to answer him at
Yeah.
first, but then it occurred to me kind of on the spot. Okay. And honestly, this I drew on this partially from previous conversation I'd had with you around this idea of just the data, right? So
Yeah.
first of all, like we just discussed now, a payroll department can show the strategic value of payroll of people data to the organization, become a
Yep.
strategic, be seen and elevated. They can level up in the
Right.
organization, right?
Yeah.
Well, it occurred to me, if you can get HR people to focus on the data, because that's something that's readily available to them as the
Yeah.
technology is improving, ever so improving, continually. It's getting more and more sophisticated by the year, by the
Yeah.
month, right? If you can get them interested in kind of waiting, like
Yeah.
wait, like in water, waiting in the I don't know what's with the water metaphors today, waiting in the data, right?
Yeah.
um you can almost kind of pull them into the future of work
Yeah.
without them really realizing it until they're there,
Yeah.
right?
Totally.
And
Yeah.
mission accomplished.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the HR's role is getting shaped the same way, right? Data is shifting. I think we've seen a bit of that. There's a lot more the frontline manager is having to do a bit more of HR's sort of transactional role, it feels like. And HR is being really pulled to do, or should be really doing a lot more strategic things. And I think this data, insights, right? Surfaced insights, predictive stuff, really connecting the dots on external data along with HCM data, is giving them a lot of power, right, to be able to be that impactful HR strategy, or delivering organization that they should be. And yeah, I think it's going to be difficult. It is generational, right? There are some folks that aren't going to embrace some of this, and there are some folks who are really going to get behind it. But I think the more that you can show employees how it impacts them positively, how it's going to make their job easier, make their role change in a more, I wouldn't even say change, shift in a way that makes them more of an analytic sort of focused resource versus maybe a transactional kind of resource. It's not going to be for everyone. Some folks want to maybe remain in that old way, but those that are looking to kind of reskill themselves and pivot towards the future, I think will embrace that stuff, and I think they'll see that it has a positive impact on both the employee and the business when they
Mm.
can use those insights to help people, guide them to good decisions, or bring them to a good solution. So I think it's a win-win, and when you can show that to people, typically people are, obviously, if they're passionate about their role, they're going to engage with that. So but there's going to be some folks, I'm sure, right, generationally, that won't, will never sort of adapt, and that just is the way human nature is, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. There's always going to be sort of an evolution in the role
Yeah.
in any domain of or area of the enterprise, right? This is certainly not unique or exclusive to HR, but it's
Yeah.
just
No.
but it is interesting to think about how it's changing. You have small, there will always be an up and coming crop of small companies
Yeah.
where the challenges are are very much, in terms of efficiencies
Yeah.
and administrative tedium and overwhelming administrative load. Is you're gonna have those HR people who are living in that world perpetually, not the same people, but
Yeah.
there'll always
Yeah.
be the new sort of crop of them. And then an organization reaches a stage where it it kind of makes a shift, or it kind of pivots a little bit, and it solves for some of that, some of those efficiencies
Yeah.
related to, or inefficiencies, excuse me, related to HR. I can't tell you how many user conversations we've had where just some of the stories are just
Yeah.
man, it's crazy. I delivered a presentation a couple weeks ago where we talked. I equated it to having the blues, right?
Oh,
You took some lyrics from old blues songs.
yeah.
Um, some of them are pretty, pretty like
Down and
pretty
out. Yeah.
frustrated, down and out. And then we took some quotes from our published case studies, and it was meant to be a little bit tongue in cheek, but
Yeah.
there could be an argument made for the HCM blues, right? So you have those people who are always in that situation, and you really just kind of have to show them, give them the new situation, and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
their eyes, it is like their third eye opens, right? And they're like, oh, I can be so much more than HRs can be
Oh,
so
yeah.
much more than just this administration. It doesn't even have to be administration.
Yeah. Well, as they say, discomfort is where you grow, right? It's where,
Yeah.
it's where you stretch, it's where it challenges you. So, yeah, I mean, I hope people are embracing these new technologies and innovations. It's a lot of people I think fear like, oh, this stuff is going to come and replace me. And the reality of it is it's really never going to replace people, right? The AI and the machine learning are all great, but the reality of it is it's always going to take that emotional intelligence. And I think the more the practitioners can embrace how the technology can elevate their role and help them benefit the employee and the business, I think I think you can see there's a lot of positives in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well stated, well stated. I'm looking at the time, and that might be a good place
Yeah.
to plant our flag there. Um,
Good deal.
yeah, thanks so much, Pete. This has been a fantastic conversation. It was great seeing you next week. It was great seeing you last week. Excuse
Last
me.
week, yeah. Well, thank you so
Um,
much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm a big fan of the show and just love the opportunity.
oh, thank you very much. And you have a podcast that
I
you've
do.
started up, HR Payroll uh,
Yep. HR
2.0.
and Payroll 2.0. I've launched that with Julie Fernandez, the legendary HR transformation advisor. We are doing a show where we are really doing it's brand free, sales free. We're really just doing very authentic conversations around payroll and HR modernization and helping share really what we know, right, and what we've learned. So check it out, HR and Payroll 2.0. You can find it on all the podcast channels, and yeah, check us
Very
out.
nice.
First
Very
episode is
nice.
up.
We'll
Yeah.
be sure to leave a link for it
Yeah.
when
Thank
we
you.
post this episode. Thank you so much, Pete. It's been wonderful.
Yes, sir. Thank you.